Have you ever wondered what goes on in a woman's mind when it comes to sexual fantasies? Today, we'll dive into this intriguing topic, offering an overview of the most common fantasies that women have. We'll also highlight the crucial role of communication and consent in discussing and exploring these fantasies. Remember, understanding these desires doesn't just satisfy curiosity, it fosters deeper connections and empathy. So, ready to delve into the world of women's fantasies? Let's move forward. First off, the fantasy of domination, a classic but still very much prevalent. Now, when we delve into this fantasy, it's crucial to understand that there's a world of difference between fantasy and reality. The desire to be dominated can be a powerful and exciting fantasy, often revolving around the idea of surrendering control and being at the mercy of another person's desires. However, it's important to keep in mind that fantasies are just that, fantasies. They exist in our minds and are not meant to be a blueprint for real-life actions. In reality, the act of domination requires a significant level of trust and communication. It's not about one person having power over another in a harmful or abusive way. Rather, it's about consensual power exchange. This means that both parties have agreed to the roles they're playing, and there's a mutual understanding of boundaries and limits. The allure of this fantasy often lies in the thrill of surrendering control. There's something undeniably exciting about letting someone else take the reins, dictating your actions and sensations. It can feel liberating, freeing you from the need to make decisions or take responsibility. Yet it's crucial to remember that this surrender is always conditional. It's only possible in a situation where you feel safe, respected, and confident that your boundaries will be honored. The desire to be dominated doesn't make anyone weak or lesser. It's simply a facet of human sexuality, a manifestation of the diverse ways in which we experience pleasure and excitement. It's a dance of power and vulnerability, a paradoxical blend of strength and submission. In such scenarios, safety is paramount. It's not just about physical safety, but also emotional safety. Open communication is key to ensuring that everyone involved is comfortable and enjoying themselves. This is where safe words come in, a pre-agreed upon word or signal that can be used to stop the action immediately if things become too intense or uncomfortable. Remember, it's all about the thrill of surrendering control, but always within agreed boundaries. Next up, the fantasy of being the seductress, the one in control. In the realm of fantasies, there's a certain allure to the idea of being a seductress. It's a role that echoes power, confidence, and control. Picture this. You are the architect of your own desires, the master of your own pleasure. It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? The seductress is a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to pursue it. She's the one who sets the pace, who decides when and how the dance of seduction unfolds. The seductress fantasy is a fascinating one because it flips the conventional script. In a world that often expects women to be passive, the seductress takes charge. She's the one who initiates, who leads, who commands. This can be incredibly empowering. The seductress fantasy allows women to imagine a scenario where they are not just participants but active, confident leaders. But why is this fantasy so appealing? Well, it's about more than just control. It's about feeling desired, irresistible even. It's about knowing that you have the power to captivate and enchant. The seductress fantasy is also about confidence. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that is bold, assertive, and unapologetically sensual. However, it's crucial to remember that fantasy and reality are two different realms. The seductress fantasy is just that, a fantasy. It's a space for exploration and imagination, but it doesn't necessarily translate into real-life behaviors or desires. Fantasies allow us to explore aspects of ourselves in a safe and imaginative space, but they should never cross boundaries of respect and consent. So, while the seductress fantasy can be empowering and exciting, it's important to remember that these are just fantasies. In real life, respect and consent are paramount. No fantasy should ever violate these principles, because at the end of the day, the most empowering and exciting scenario of all is one in which everyone involved feels safe, respected, and valued. Being the seductress is about empowerment and control, but remember, respect and consent are still key. Now let's talk about the voyeuristic fantasy, a more passive but equally intriguing one. Voyeurism at its core is about observing others. It's a fantasy of watching, of being a silent participant in an intimate scene. It's not about invasion of privacy, but rather about the thrill of catching a glimpse into an intimate world that is not one's own. For some, this fantasy may involve watching others in a private setting, while for others, It may be about seeing a public display of affection or sensuality. What makes this fantasy so enticing? Well, there are a few factors at play. Firstly, there's the thrill of the forbidden. In our everyday lives, we are taught that it's not polite to stare, that it's wrong to intrude on others' privacy. But in the realm of fantasy, these rules can be bent or even broken. It's this transgression of societal norms that can make the voyeuristic fantasy so thrilling. Secondly, there's the element of anonymity. As a voyeur, one can remain unseen, unknown. There's a safety in this invisibility, a freedom to explore one's desires without judgment or scrutiny. This can be incredibly liberating, opening up a space for self-discovery and exploration. But while we're discussing this, it's important to acknowledge the ethical considerations. Voyeurism, like any other fantasy, should only be explored with the full consent of all parties involved. It's crucial to respect people's privacy and boundaries. Illegal activities such as spying on others without their knowledge or consent are not only unethical, but also punishable by law. Also, remember that fantasies are just that, fantasies. They don't necessarily reflect our desires in real life. It's perfectly normal to have fantasies that you wouldn't want to act out. They're a safe space for exploration, for pushing boundaries, for letting your imagination run wild. While voyeuristic fantasies can be exciting, it's crucial to remember that everyone involved must be consenting. Finally, we have the fantasy of novelty and variety, a desire for new experiences. This fantasy is like a siren call, beckoning to the shores of unexplored territories. It's the allure of the unknown, the thrill of the unexpected, the exhilaration of the untried. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast forest, a labyrinth of paths stretching out before you, each one leading to a different adventure. This is the appeal of novelty and variety. It's not just about seeking something different, but also about exploring the limitless depths of one's own desires, passions, and fantasies. This fantasy is about breaking free from the monotony of routine, about stepping out of the comfortable and the familiar. It's about the excitement of newness, the rush of adrenaline when you're about to venture into the unknown. Every new experience, every different scenario, every fresh roleplay brings with it a sense of discovery, a feeling of liberation, a taste of the extraordinary. But while the appeal of novelty and variety is undeniable, it's important to remember the cardinal rule of every fantasy: open communication and consent. Open communication allows for the expression of desires, the setting of boundaries, the negotiation of scenarios. It is the foundation upon which the fantasy of novelty and variety is built. Consent, on the other hand, is the cornerstone. It ensures that every journey into the unknown is a mutual adventure. Every exploration of the new is a shared experience. Every venture into the extraordinary is a consensual expedition. Consent is not just about saying yes, but about saying yes enthusiastically, about saying yes to the experience, the exploration, the adventure. Novelty and variety can spice things up, but always ensure everyone involved is comfortable and consenting. After all, the ultimate goal of every fantasy, every desire, every passion, is not just about seeking pleasure, but about seeking pleasure that is shared, pleasure that is consensual, pleasure that is joyous and fulfilling for everyone involved. So, there you have it, some of the most common sexual fantasies of women. We've navigated through the labyrinth of the female psyche and unearthed some fascinating truths. Let's take a moment to recap what we've discovered. We started our journey with the desire to be dominated, a complex fantasy that taps into the allure of surrendering control. Yet, it's essential to remember that this fantasy, like all others, hinges on trust, consent, and mutual enjoyment. Next, we delved into the Seductress Fantasy, where women envision themselves as the captivating enchantress, the irresistible siren. We uncovered that this fantasy often speaks to a desire for empowerment and sexual autonomy. Our exploration then led us to the Voyeuristic Fantasy, a scenario where women find pleasure in watching others, often unseen. Here, the thrill lies in the clandestine nature of the act. Finally, we touched on the fantasy of novelty and variety, a testament to the human craving for new experiences and the excitement that unfamiliarity can bring. In all these revelations, it's crucial to emphasize that understanding, respect, and consent are the cornerstones. Whether discussing or exploring these fantasies, these principles should never be overlooked. No fantasy, however common or uncommon, should ever compromise the safety, comfort, or dignity of any party involved. Remember, fantasies are a normal part of our sexual selves, but communication and consent are always paramount. Thank you for joining us on this intriguing exploration.